just ladies today. Let's see who arrives to join us soon. So we are going to get started with our 12 o'clock session now. And we have a session here around data-driven decisions. I've had a little insight into what's to come, and I see how this works. I see how the data helps you make better decisions, and that's what these guys are going to share with you now. So we have Lisa Henry, who is the Director of Customer Experience at TK Events, and we also have Luke Buckley, who is the Head of Sales at VenuIQ. And I always like to try and share something interesting about speakers when we've just got a small number. My interesting fact about Luke is perhaps more interesting to me. We used to be colleagues a long time ago, 5-6 years ago, so we love running into each other on this circuit. And something that really fascinated me about Lisa when I was reading up on you is Lisa worked at TK Events. She left, but she loved it so much she went back, and so I'm looking forward to hearing more about why that might be. Over to you guys. Oh, sorry, actually, please use the QR code to send your questions in. I'm so sorry for interrupting your flow.
No worries. Thank you, Vanessa. Thanks, everyone, for coming. So, as Vanessa was saying, I'm Luke, this is Lisa. This session's going to be talking about data-driven decision-makings, where you get your data from, how you interpret it, and how you eventually make better decisions based off of it.
Yeah, so as Luke said, my name's Lisa Henry. I'm the Director of Customer Experience here at TK Events. So contrary to how I sound, I do live in the UK. I used to work for TK Events when I was in Canada. I left when I came to the UK, and then I rejoined. So we have offices in London, Toronto, Canada, and Vancouver. So we cover 16 hours of the working day, as I like to say. And most of our clients are global software corporations, enterprise, and we service global audiences. So we do conferences and events end-to-end with registration software that handles registration, hotels, communications, payment system, and then we have event logistics with venue sourcing, contract management, and our in-house production team, our own design team, and then in 2020 we built our own proprietary virtual platform, which has a lot of custom features, custom analytics, build your own booth, leaderboard, and 2022 and 2023 we've had a big focus on how to blend live events and conferences with our virtual platform, and that's probably how we met Luke, and with a couple of our clients doing hybrid events. And our partnership is we integrate our registration system with VenuIQ, with the mobile app, Bluetooth tracking, and also, yeah, to get the right data and results.
That's it. And for those who don't know me, I'm Luke. I'm the head of sales for VenuIQ. VenuIQ, we're a privately owned, off-the-shelf software company. It's a really weird name for someone who builds apps. We're not a venue finder. What we do is we have one code base that we can auto-build mobile apps from that you guys can customize. We've got a client or two in the audience that have used this, and it allows you to customize your branding, enhance certain areas of your event, whether it be content, whether it be networking. The title of our company, the name of us, actually comes from our Bluetooth tracking, which is what a lot of the heavy data can come from too, and that's where the name comes from, that we can give any venue intelligence. Cool, it's freaking me out that you're not lifting your thing. I keep thinking you're going to press it on your laptop. So where did we meet? So we did an event, Mash Media had an event on like a hosted buyer-y type thing. Lisa, like she was saying, was trying to merge her virtual events with in-person, and obviously technology is the easiest way that you can go about doing that. And tracking was something that a few of her clients were looking into. One, to gain intelligence on their exhibition floor plans, the other one for CPD points. And yeah, 2021 it was, 2022, 22, and yeah, we've not looked back since.
Yeah, so we've worked together all over North America and the UK and Europe, and so with member organizations, associations, large corporate conferences and exhibitions. And the biggest thing we've been seeing is the results of the data we capture between the two of us, and that's, I think, what we're going to talk about today. So I mean, as the director of customer experience, I'd say data is probably one of my favorite things, and this is one of my favorite quotes. If we have data, let's look at data, and if we have opinions, or if we all have opinions, let's just go with mine. So if you break that down, I think what we're really looking at here is your event decisions and strategy needs to come from the data, and if you don't have good data to work with, you're going based on the opinions and feelings of how you think an event went or how you think an event should go. So we'll be talking about, we know everyone's been asked to prove ROI to sponsors and stakeholders, so why are you doing this conference year over year? If you want to launch something new, is it going to be worth it? And yeah, there's massive amounts of data out there, so how do you really get what is useful for you and your clients and your stakeholders and your sponsors, and how do you make it work for you?
Cool. So we've spoken a lot about data, and it's a kind of buzzword for many people. Feels like mine's just gone mega noise cancelling. I saw, yeah, cool. So two types of things that I'm going to talk through is going to be passive and active data. Now, I mentioned we've got two things that we do in VenuIQ. One is a mobile app, one is tracking. Now, our Bluetooth tracking, everyone's given a Bluetooth beacon and it is assigned to their person. Once we give it to them, we know where they've gone in the public event spaces. And that's called passive data. They don't have to do anything. You know, I can see that Sarah has come and sat in this session. Sarah doesn't have to do anything. Sarah's just come in and sat down in the session. What that gives us is idle times. It gives us exhibition heat maps. It gives us session attendance. The other kind of data that we have is active data or action-based data. And that is then pushing a button. Q&A. If you submit a question, that's action-based data. And we've got a versus in between both of these things, but actually they don't often head off against each other. They're actually used to create a compelling story of what's happened at the event.
Yeah, and we have the visual versus raw data, so I'm sure everyone knows you get an excessive amount of raw data, and how to make it, how do you configure it to apply to your events and make it readable, and going a step further to make it easy to understand and consumable for, year after year, and acts as an aid for event success.
Awesome. So we thought when we look at data versus information, it's important that you guys know they're very different things. Data, we're going to use the Lego metaphor here. I'm sure a few of you parents have stubbed your foot onto this and see it as a terrible pain on all your souls. But this is a great visual representation of what data versus information is. So data is what you're seeing right there in front of you. It is core lines of data. They don't correlate to each other. There's been no links made between what one line means to the next line. It is just a mishmash of everything that we've collected from registration to on-site to post-event.
Yeah, and then we get into sorted. It gets a bit more defined. You can sort things by your sessions or by who attended them. It becomes a bit easier to access this data away and begins to take shape so you can understand it.
Then we get onto arranged data, so you can see that we've then got them into beautiful piles. For the people who know it, that's actually Duplo, I think, so we've gone off brand a bit there. But we do actually, at this point, we'll see that if you're looking at it as a spreadsheet, they've been arranged into specific sessions that have been put there. All of your lead scanning data is all inside of one place, or it has been arranged in such a way that you can actually view it.
Yeah, I think, and we're now moving into the information section, so this is where we're starting to use visual aids to articulate your data. I think, you know, a variety of charts and other visual representations to simplify your data and what it means, and everything becomes easier as it's laid out for you. And we take your data and help you understand it and help the key stakeholders understand it.
And then this is really where it gets to the most important part. You've got to explain your information with a story. I think me just telling you how many people are in this session, whilst that's useful information, it's not actually going to tell you a story about what happened at your event. We could look into Jill at the back of the room there, and we could say, right, Jill, what happened with Jill? She was at her exhibition stand for a while. She came over and saw the best session of the whole day, and then she went back to her stand. That is telling it with a story.
Yeah, and once you have it all configured and sent to you, we make this actionable. So really looking into the insights of what that story is telling you. with a debrief meeting and taking it a step further and painting that picture. So what's actually happening and how is it going to help your planning going forward. So maybe you thought you were going to capture a demographic or information and we're discussing it, you realize it's either not useful or it is useful or you're looking for something else. So it's just helping to refocus to save time on tracking crucial information. So yeah, now we know what kind of data you can receive and types you can collect. Where do we get this data from?
Cool. So those of you among us here, you wouldn't be here if you didn't use a reg system. Now, there's some things that we're going to talk about today. Some are on here, some are not, that are insanely cool, but also expensive ways that you can get your data. Registration is one of the biggest ones you've got, and as Lisa does that on a daily basis, I'm going to let Lisa say about that.
Yeah, so my department at TK Events Customer Experience focuses on end-to-end registration management for our clients. And as I always say, it's your first step into an event, whether that's pre-event or on-site. Is registration is your first touch point. And this is also, I think, where you get the most important information from. So beyond basic, fields, first name, last name, email, company, what are you really looking for and what are other people in your company looking for? So not just sponsors and what you need at an event, but what do you need, what do all the key players need? And so your registration should capture everything for why they're coming and not just their contact information. So we have a really intense, detailed brief that helps you think of the questions that you should be asking C-suite, etc., for what you should be capturing on site, especially with our clients who are global and different regions are looking to capture different things. So we have all those conditional questions that are really important, and it's really the core of your event data for who's attending. So you need this information to go into things like your mobile app, your lead scanning, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, totally. So like Lisa's saying, if you aren't collecting something at registration, you're going to really, really struggle to get it after that. Whether it be inside of your mobile app, you're going to have some awesome incentives for people to give you more information. That information then goes into your mobile app. Now, this data you're going to get from that, like I said, is action-based data. That could be what sessions people are attending, what's popular, what's not popular. It could also be, though, looking into your networking, who's matched with who has sent messages or meetings with who. And inside of your mobile app, nowadays, everyone should have their lead scanning inside of there. QR codes, though, that were made in the 1980s, have never been more popular, and lead scanning is one of the best ways that you can see who has connected with who. We've actually recently built it out so delegates or attendees can scan other attendees now, which has opened up a whole floodgates of learning who's connecting with who. And what does that data allow you to do? It allows you to then look into new event ideas, new revenue streams, even new activations. Then we work our way around to the top, which is one of the biggest data pulls that you can do, which is Bluetooth tracking. Now, we do Bluetooth tracking to track sessions, like I said. We do it to track networking areas, but we can even do it to track evening dinner receptions and things like that. And on average, your tracking should be pulling in somewhere in the region of about 10 to 50 million lines of data that you could get. So it's a huge pool of things. And last but not least is, from me anyway, is QR code scanning. So very similar to lead scanning, if you allocate QR codes around your venue, you are having someone who has actioned and actually scanned something to say that they are inside of a session, that they want to download some information, that they want to sign themselves up for a future webinar. So huge bits of data that all is actionable.
Yeah, this year Luke and I have done 4 events together where we've used this QR scanning around an event within the mobile app and having like a passport game or a scavenger hunt, and especially one of them was a big internal sales summit, and it was extremely successful. We had people scan that they were in the session, they got points for it, and it got pretty competitive, which was really great engagement for our client, and it does bring to the next point engagement leaderboards. So I feel like these are some of the additional elements that keep your audience engaged, but it is very underutilized. I think coming up we'll talk about a case study that we've done for 4 years now, a client virtually, and as soon as they're paring down their virtual to be much smaller, but then you see a lot less of that engagement with sponsors when you take out the leaderboards, the gamification from that, and adding it back in boosted those numbers instantly. So it's underutilized, but I think it keeps your event elevated. So
We even have one client of ours, we use, and every action has a certain amount of points allocated to it. We have a client that actually turns on an engagement leaderboard but doesn't show it in the front end, and what they do is post-event, that leaderboard gives them their top 10 users of the mobile app. So then they can call up each one of those people and say, hey, you were one of the top users, what would you want me to do for next year?
Yeah, with all of that, I think we get the 3 stages. It's pre-event, on-site, and post-event, which is, of course, very obvious, but all of equal importance. So this is where we get the data from, the timeline of how we should be collecting, planning, and using this data. So pre-event, capture as much information you can. Data needs to be collected before it's used. So Luke, you're on rule 1.
Yeah, classic events. We're coming up with rules for you guys. So first, define what your ROI is. When I ever would do a meeting, the first thing we do is scope what we need. That could be understanding that maybe for a mobile app, it's that you are going to have more people scanning, more networking. If it's registration, is it that we need to have 10% more people registering? Is it site traffic? Is it whatever? So define what your ROI is.
Yeah, rule 2, work with your sponsors and partners and so on to define their ROI. So obviously this is your event and your ROI is important, but part of your return on investment does come from sponsors. And so we think we need to think about what's important to them, how it can lead the way in your pre-event data and your registration strategy for them. And this data is going to be shared with them and to help decide if their investment is worth it year over year. So we should always be watching how many sponsors have signed into platforms or are engaging, and and what incentives we could be offering them. So with this data, VIP experience, hosted buyer, what's going to be useful for them year over year. And then next one, rule 3, capturing delegate information. So we need to be thinking about what we should be capturing for your attendees, your CRM. I can't tell you the amount of times we've built registration platforms, and it's we integrate with so many CRMs, and if you don't have things even correctly, like you have an extra space after when someone enters something in and it doesn't sync correctly, or you have the Canadian provinces listed out of order and then it doesn't sync correctly, and you're like, these things are important to think about. It makes your clients' lives so much easier when you're capturing delegate information correctly and matching it to what tools you already have. So rule number 4.
This is just the inner salesperson within me, is to know where your leads or attendees are coming from. I know you probably all do this anyway, but I've got to say it because it's a presentation. But you guys will need to know, we, with our registration tool, have 5 of the exact same form going, but have 1 for your socials, 1 for your emails. If you've got any media partners, obviously give them their own form so that you know where it's coming from, so you can make more efficient investments in them in the future years going. Rule number 5 is know where you want it to be accessed. Some of you guys will want it in an Excel spreadsheet, or you'll want to have it in a spreadsheet so you can send it to someone so they don't log into the software and break things. Some of you will want it in your reg software. Some of you will want it to be transferred into your mobile app. So you need to understand, pre-event, there's loads of time, right? We can swap data quite easily post-event because we're all sat at our desks at home with a cup of tea. But it's when you're on site in the heat of the moment, you need to know where you want your information to be accessed from.
And finally, timelines. So I think this one is especially sticky this year. I feel like in the industry, we've had some of the shortest event timelines this year alone, and so we're constantly scrambling to get things together. But I think it's like a clear communication on when you need things and asking those right questions to make sure both sides understand how long it will take and when things need to be done, like whether that's pre-event or when we start moving on site. And we know pre-event on-site, I need you to grab this at this specific time, so I'm not running around doing something else. And yeah, it's a difficult one because I think this is the one that's been very difficult this year to stick to, but having an outline of when things are to be expected from both sides are very important. And then I think that's everything for a pre-event, so moving to on-site.
So, as the techie provider for the two people on the stage anyway, all of your data should be live. You shouldn't ever have something that takes overnight to do. It shouldn't need anyone to go in and manually change things. You should have your data live and actionable, whether that be in a platform or via API.
Yeah, and helping provide solutions on site versus the following year. So having that data live and being able to look at it and having someone dedicated either on your events team or your technology provider to look at the results and reviewing them and not just reviewing them after the event. So on the events Luke and I have worked on this year, I think a big thing is that we look at like how multi-day events, if a sponsor is not getting the scans that other sponsors around them are getting, and we're saying like, what's up? How are you struggling with the app, or you're not getting traction at sessions? And we're looking at all of this and in the moment or during a break and trying to action it to make the current event successful, not just to get people to buy in for next year. So.
And I know we all love an Excel spreadsheet. I don't think we could live without Excel spreadsheets. But when I'm talking about live actionable data, you have to know what your capabilities are while you're on site. And are you going to want to go through 100 rows on a spreadsheet? Probably not. Going back to that Lego chart that we did, you need it to be actual actionable information. It needs to be shown visually. It needs to tell you the story that you need to know.
Yeah, and your live event data does affect your success on site, and it's not just post-event. So who is going to be the person with this data on site and be working with the data as the event is running? Are you going to be configuring it every day for your sponsors, for your key stakeholders? Are we looking to have this information available to the executives so they know if something's not being targeted, or a region, industry, sector? So these are all things that Luke and I do in our jobs, and how we make sure it's at the forefront of our on-site processes. So you get your pre-event data in order, your on-site data can be configured seamlessly.
Awesome. And then the biggest thing that I'd say, obviously I'm a smiley face salesman, so I do think people are important, but it's not just about the product. My product, VenuIQ, we do very, very similar things to most of the other app providers that are in here. We all have agenda and Q&A and messaging and things. It's about the people, though. It's about the team that's actually going to help you deliver it, whether that be that you're up against it and over time and you need us to upload it, or whether that you guys don't have the capabilities in order to process that data quickly in your team, and we'll do it for you on site.
Yeah, knowing your limitations and bandwidth on site, and if you won't have time to provide the data, then your supplier can. So, post-event.
Cool, so now we come into post-event. So again, we've gone from rules to steps now. But first thing is that you've got to collect and merge your data. Really, how the industry is right now, you need to integrate all of your platforms together. You should have one platform that will pull over all of the information you need. We do a lot of work with Swoogo as well, and we have an integration that will pull over everything from Swoogo. So you need to find out what your one point of truth is, whether you want it to be in your reg system, whether you want it to be in an Excel spreadsheet, I don't care, but you need to find it and merge it all into one place, otherwise you won't know what you're missing.
Yeah, I think present and interpret. So, I work for an events agency and I have clients, and then I have technology. We have technology at TK Events and have technology providers. And I think the biggest thing I see is that if you're not in the data mindset, you're just looking at spreadsheets with hundreds of thousands of lines, and what does it mean, and how do you present it, interpret it? So, and it's different things to like your client, your sponsors, your C-suite, even internally, and to your suppliers. So we don't just hand over the report to you. We take the data and interpret it and make it visual, which leads nicely into step 3, which is like debrief and discuss. So I can't stress the importance, I think, on debriefs and having them quite quickly post-event, and making sure that everyone is involved, agency, client, client, stakeholders, agency, supplier, and all decision makers. So the discussions and interpretations, I think, are critical to the event moving forward in the years to come, but also what we do especially is we review previous year's data. So we have clients that we've been working with for years, and it was like, how does it compare to last year? And you know, we're a couple years out of the pandemic now, so we do have some good on-site data from 2023 to compare to 2022 and 2021. So we should be looking at all of that data and making sure we're tracking the things that have been tracked consistently over the years. We're looking at it, so and presenting it in a visual way that's easy to understand.
Awesome. And then we go into plan, plan, plan. So this is basically, I think, as an agency, as third-party suppliers, we get reviewed every year. Whenever our contracts are up and I need you to sign another one with me, we get reviewed and we run through all the things that worked and all the things that didn't work, and all the things that don't work or didn't work as well. We plan how we're going to make it better in the future. I think one of the biggest fall downs from events that happen every year with organisers is there isn't that review process. There isn't that planning about how we're going to do it differently. Sometimes we're all guilty of being zombies and just doing same venue again, same agenda, same everything. So you need to review it and you need to plan multiple different ways how you're going to change it and be better. Then you need to address your money makers and your cost savers. So I think probably in the last 2 years, we've had all of our directors on our back about the bottom line, right? Bottom line needs to be lower and the top line needs to be higher. So you need to look when you're doing your plans, where can we save some money, but at the same time, where can we invest money? What's going to make us money? And how are you going to present that to your board? It's going to be with data again. It's going to be looking at, like, here is a proof that if we start another event, let's say talking about event registration software, we know that that was the most well-attended sessions throughout Event Tech Live, and therefore we can have the data to back us up going in and launching something new and exciting.
Yeah, and then I think step 6, identifying what's missing. So at every event, you know, you could do all this work pre-event and on-site, and you're still going to come up with something that you didn't think of before, or that is new to you, whether it's because you've launched a new product, or there's a new type of session at your event, or something's come up in the survey where you know, they want to see a more focus on something else. So it's just making sure you take those learnings and you're really diligent about determining what future data you need to capture year over year and continually expanding. So that's why I think it's so important to have these meetings to discuss going through your data. And then best one, I think, is doing it again. So this shouldn't just be like a one-time meeting and then forgetting about it, and then, or just be like, oh yeah, it all went great, so let's just do it again for 2024. So I think it's data to be used across the board and year over year, and don't just do it again, just do it again and again and again. And apply what you've learned and what went well, and use it for your event plans and objectives when developing your marketing plans. And so a lot of time we work with clients, and we've done one big of their conferences, and then they take that data and they start doing it for their smaller events. So I think that's really key post-event. So yeah, we're going to talk about one of the case studies we've done. So I think this is the best way to understand how important the data is and how we supercharge the event with our data. So we have a client at TK Events which does an annual congress for their global audience. So about 50 countries. It is hosted on TK Events virtual platform for a few years, and then in 2022 it became a hybrid event, and we were scoped for a dual registration pathway for live and virtual event, which was integrated with their membership portal. This led to the on-site check experience at the conference. So it was in Manchester in 2022, and then in Rotterdam in 2023, about a month ago. And then again in our TK Events virtual suite for their digital portion. And then so on site they wanted a mobile app, sponsor lead scanning, session tracking, and this is where we engaged with Luke and our partners VenuIQ, and I'll just go over some things that we provided for them.
Cool. So on site, I'm feeling like I'm saying the same words again and again and again, so I'm going to do it really quick. So on site for those guys, we had lead and sponsor reports. Again, we identified the ROI for them in data, and that was that their sponsors were happy and that they got everything that they needed so that they would spend more money with them the following year. We also then did heat mapping. So this was, again, very exhibitor driven. They wanted to know where the busiest places were in their floor plan, which, am I going too close? Oh, sorry. What we would do in that situation is we gave them hourly heat maps, which showed where the busiest stands were, what was the good activations. 9 times out of 10, whoever had the booze got the busiest stands, to be honest. But, you know, we've seen it in the past that we've had people who have had, like, virtual golf on their stand, on a tiny little small stand, and that has completely dwarfed this massive, huge accounting stand that just had cookies on there.
Sorry, I jumped ahead. Yeah, so session attendance was also critical. So they award education credits for attending sessions, and then a certificate to as a professional membership organization. So we used in person. We used the Bluetooth tracking to determine what sessions they were in, and as well as like using that for the sponsors and the heat mapping. But for CPEs. This was really key that they have all the information of exactly where their members were attending. And then, yeah, we did a virtual venue. This is just an example of one of our virtual venues. But we had to provide them, obviously, virtual data. So we have our own custom analytics dashboard, which tracks movements through our virtual platform. And then it also has the time spent watching the live stream. So this is how they could get their points automatically. So using our information with what they were doing on site, we merged it into one report and one PowerPoint for them so that they could easily review and apply certificates. And then it's also, we did a lot of on-demand data for them. So a big thing is that they are globals. They have people coming in from APAC, North America, and they need to be awarding points for on-demand content. So we had tracking who watched on demand, what time they started, what time they finished. Everything was in certain increments. And yeah, and that, I think it was one of the biggest learnings for our hybrid events, is that it doesn't just stop when your event stops. It goes all the way into post-event, and having that content available afterwards, allowing your audience to get the most of the materials, and then making that actionable data. So they were actually very surprised with the amount of people that came, not just in to watch the information, but go to the resource library and download all the information that they needed to know. So I guess that's all the elements. I think the real question is, did we deliver? Like, do they, are we doing gathering the correct information, presenting it, making sure that they're rebooking with us.
Well, it's a wider question too. I think, did we deliver is something that everyone needs to ask themselves every time they do an event. And what we're talking about here in terms of data collection, the data should tell you whether you have delivered or you haven't delivered. And yeah, opinions are opinions, but it should be that the data you've collected for your sponsors, you should show that you've delivered ROI to them. It should show that you've made money, obviously. It should show that registrations are up and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, so just some conclusions. I mean, obviously, we are here to help. It is what we do. So we like to do it for lots of people. We have what we would call our action plans, define what success looks like to you. Involve your agencies and suppliers ASAP. I feel like that's such a key 2023 note. Brainstorm your data requirements. Define your timescales and milestones, the pre-event, on-site, post-event. And let every department in your company be involved, and then do it again every year.
Totally, and that last from one point, that penultimate point, is just so true. A good event technology should affect every single department that you have. Your sponsorship sales, your marketing team, your ops and logistics teams should be best friends with people like me who will, well, it won't be me, it will be the customer success guys who actually deliver the stuff. But you should be best friends with your technology providers in that sense, and let every single one of your departments put forward a need or a request that they have. Otherwise, you're only losing.
That's it. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks for listening.
I don't know if there's any questions, but
There are loads of questions.
Oh,
I just forgot
nice.
to pick up the microphone.
Okay.
So no one will be able to hear them. We have 5 questions. So going by order of votes, because a couple of them have been up-liked as well. First one, how do you display your data post-event to the client?
That's a really good question. First and foremost, we scope with the client how they want it. So we can, like I said, raw data can be turned into all kinds of informations and stories. So the first thing we do is we would scope what they want. If you're asking me generically what the best practice situation is, it's one document, a PDF, very visual, containing page breakdowns of each thing, and what we'll do is we'll show the visual representation of what's happened, but we'll actually share the spreadsheet and the data of where that's coming from inside of there. So if they did want to dig one bit deeper, it's one click away.
Okay.
I do think there are some like good like rules of thumb. It's like, you know, you wouldn't display countries in a pie chart because if you have more than 40 countries, like your pie chart looks weird. So there are some like marketing visualization factors that you can think of, and it's honestly like I've taken a LinkedIn course on it on like how best to visually display data, and it was like, you know, more than 10 things, don't put it in a pie chart. And so there are those pieces that you're like, you know, play with it, like put all your data in something, and then you can use, I mean, PowerPoint I think is great, and then you can just see what it looks like, and if it looks good, then go with that. And I mean, obviously, of course, mostly is we ask how the clients want to see it, like what makes sense to them, because it does depend.
And I'm sure you'll be able to answer more questions on that if anyone has a little more detail they want on that one afterwards. This one's a really interesting question. How do you make sure that your heat mapping data is accurate?
Awesome question. What we fit every single Bluetooth tracking event that we do. Whilst our mobile app, you know, Lisa and her team actually deliver it without us there at all, and sometimes don't really speak to us because it's that easy to do. Our Bluetooth tracking, we have 2 people that go out on site every time, and those 2 people at least will be one person will be reporting back the live numbers, and that isn't just for heat mapping, that's for sessions too. In here, we'll come in and see that there's about 7 people in here, and we'll be reporting that back to a guy called Paul, who you can go speak to on our booth, who will then verify that our system's showing that. So it's actually loads and loads of just constant, like we're telling you here, reviews,
Do it
and
again.
making sure
Do it again.
exactly, because you'd be shocked how day to day technology is set to the same thing, and it still changes.
Doesn't do what you want to do. Awesome. Thank you. Next up, do you think that different types of events, like marketing events versus expos, for example, do they need totally different data points?
Totally.
Yeah, I wouldn't say totally,
No?
but yes, definitely. I'd say definitely different data points, and I think it really depends on your objectives. Like, why are we doing this event? So it's not just like, oh, let's just like, do we care what country they're coming from if they're all coming from the UK? So it's like you do have to really determine that beforehand, and it's like, what's your objective at this expo, you know, as opposed to what's your objective for like a user conference?
Yeah, or an internal communication event.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is like an exhibition with a conference on, right? So your data points here are typically very networking orientated.
Right.
Whereas when I think of events like yours, maybe that is conferences with an exhibition afterwards.
Yeah.
The data you need to collect from those people is very, very different, and how we report back on it would be different too.
Great. And you guys are able to advise on that, presumably, on the way.
Yeah, of course.
Technology is just a load of custom fields that we make and put together that looks really good.
Okay. Next question. 2 more to go. Are we all right for time? Yep, excellent. This is very good, detailed questions. Ooh. How do organisers decide what data is available for badge scanning versus registration data collected? That's the first half of the question. So how do organisers decide what data is available for badge scan versus registration data collected?
So as in, I guess, badge scanning as like, what if I scan your badge, what information are you allowed to see?
That's what I imagine by that.
Yeah.
So sometimes during registration, you might collect actually quite a lot more information than you would share if I was to scan Luke's badge, for example.
Right. Well, I think, I mean, step one, which is what my team does all the time when we set this up, is we read our client's privacy policy, because it will tell you in that like crazy long document what you're allowed to share with third parties. And if it says, and a lot of I think companies will have policies on, are you allowed to share their email address? So one of the biggest things that we do by default on registration is have an opt-in for agreeing to share information with sponsors. So I mean, it's if you're agreeing for someone to scan your information, of course it's like, what are you taking besides anything that is on the badge, first name, last name, company, but it has to be decided. Are you willing to give up their email addresses? And I think it really depends. Like a lot of our clients have their partners come to an event where they don't want their partners to have the email addresses because they're like a services, you know, they're a middleman essentially. Yeah. So they don't want them to like bypass them. They're there in conjunction to work together. So email addresses are no. But if you're like, yeah, it's actually better if you just talk to this person directly, then maybe email address. Like I feel like at Event Tech Live, they're like, no, I don't want you to go through Event Tech Live. I want you to come directly to Lisa if you want to talk about something. So yeah, have my email address.
Just before you answer, Luke, in case this might preface where you're going, because there's a second half to this question. It wasn't trying to trick you.
Four-letter acronym?
No, it's just how, when there are limitations in place, for example, exactly what you're explaining there, which is not uncommon, not always, but not uncommon. What can organisers do to help improve the exchange of information when there are limiters in place?
Well, the first thing you've got to do is you need to look at what your tech stack can do. GDPR will guide you on this. You know, there's a lot of people who ask me, am I GDPR compliant? It is literally the law. It's like saying I don't murder people. You know, that's what GDPR is like.
That's the point we've got to.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So it's a great question, though, because what you do in our system, it's a series of flags. You just choose what fields you want them to be able to see when they scan someone and what fields they're going to miss out on. And the reason you do that is either one, from a do they need that data point of view, is it just irrelevant stuff, but number two, from a GDPR perspective, in B2B spaces, if that information is relevant to someone reaching out, it doesn't matter, for example, if, let's say, coming to this event, you registered and you said, I don't want my information shared with sponsors. That's fine, they won't share it with sponsors. But if I scan your badge, that is an action that will mean that I get your information. It's a different flag. So it's basically just working out in your head what you would need people to see and what you wouldn't, and using technology, which is obviously more reportable, finding ways that people can exchange it, whether it's QR code scanning or mailing lists.
Thank you. And we have a final question, which is a top 3 question. So what are the top 3 data points that you consistently see help event organisers the most?
So I'll go first, just because I'm loud and annoying. We have one in our system called AIMS. It's something that you turn on, and it's aims of attendance. Why are you here? And the classic things are, you know, I'm here to learn, I'm here to network, I'm here to find new suppliers. And with that one flag, that one filter, I know whether I want to speak to you or not.
Okay.
Well, that was mine too. That was definitely one of mine. I think, well, especially our clients, our corporate clients, the global audience, is really, people want to talk to people from their own region or their own industry, and so it's when you have a conference that's quite big and has a lot of different industries attending, it's like this person does what you do and you want to talk to them. So I'd say that's a pretty key data point.
And then probably the third thing is passive data, is a user journey for where someone's gone. So it depends on your event. Like we were talking about, if something's content-led, then I would say knowing what sessions they've been to and looking into a session and seeing what was good and what was bad, you know, to know that in the future, do we need to do any more events like that? Or if it's stupidly well attended, the marketer with the news going, oh my God, I'm going to share the hell out of this for my next event.
Yeah,
you know?
I understand. All right, great. Guys, thank you so much. There was a lot of detail there, and you did really well to get through it in a way that was very consumable. So
only 5 people left.
I appreciate that. Some people came too.
Yeah.
And thank you to all of you for joining us. The Ingo stage will recommence at 1 o'clock. So it's a pretty quick turnaround, I think.
Nice.
All right, thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.